My friend Blair lost a bet, so he ended up having to buy me this Dutch oven. So this is a new Dutch oven I've never used. And I was at my butcher yesterday, and they had oxtail on sale, and I've never made oxtail soup. So in a device I've never used, cooking something I've never cooked, let's try this. This is going to be a long video. I don't know how long the video itself is going to be, but making it's going to be long because this stuff has to cook for a long time. Anyway, we're going to start with heating up our Dutch oven. Now it's very thick, so it heats up very slowly. So my Dutch oven's hot, and I'm starting with 830 grams of oxtail. I'm going to add in some olive oil, and we're going to brown the oxtail. Now we want to brown all sides, and don't put too much oil in because this stuff's got a lot of fat in it. Okay, so as you can see, our oxtail is browned. We'll take them out of the pot, lower our heat to a medium heat. You can see we got quite a bit of more oil in there than, or fat than when we started. Now we're going to throw in vegetables, just some onion, some carrot, and some celery. We're just going to get a bit of color on those. Now, this first part isn't actually the soup. We're going to make a stock first with the oxtail, and then we make the soup later. Okay, after a few minutes, our vegetables have softened up. Now note, we did the vegetables on a medium heat, but we did the oxtail on a high heat because we wanted it to brown, not steam. Now we add a bit of water to deglaze the bottom of the pan. As you can see, all that flavor that was stuck to the bottom is now coming off into what is going to be our stock at some point. Okay, once the pan's deglazed, we put the oxtail back in the pan, or back in the Dutch oven. Try to get everything in there. Now, we cover it with water and simmer it for about 5 hours. First, we're going to bring it up to a boil. make sure everything's covered. We don't want anything sticking above the water. Actually, I think I'm going to add a bit more. So that was about 2.5 liters. Call it adding 3 liters of water, maybe a bit more. So we're going to bring that up to a boil, and then we're going to simmer it. Okay, it's now boiling. I'm going to give it a quick stir. As you can see, there's already a lot of fat coming off of these off this oxtail. So now I'm going to cover it and bring it down to a medium or low temperature, and see you in 5 hours. I almost forgot. At this point, I'm going to add in some aromatics. That's tarragon and rosemary and some bay leaves. I didn't really measure it out. I just kind of took half of what I had. I don't think it'll make that big a difference. It's a lot of liquid. And this is all going to get strained anyway. So we'll just chuck that in there. Now we'll simmer it for 5 hours. All right, 5 hours later, you're still here. Maybe get a life. Anyway, so after 5 hours, this is what it looks like. We've lost a good portion of our liquid. Now we take the oxtail out. Now the idea is we're going to let that cool, and then we're going to separate the meat from the bone and other inedible bits. But as you can see, it's just falling apart now, which is kind of what we were shooting for. And the rest of this has done its job. So now we'll strain off the liquid, and then we'll let that cool so we can scoop the fat off of it. Okay, so this weird camera angle is so that you can see me strain out the stock. Okay, and there we are. Stock has been strained. So after that, you end up with a plate of meat, 334 grams, a plate of bone and cartilage and fat and other inedible stuff at 262 grams, and about 3/4 of a liter of stock. The stock will go in the fridge, and then tomorrow I'll scoop the fat off of that. It won't go to waste though. We'll use it as the starter for our soup, and we'll continue this adventure.
All right, this is going to be a very vegetable heavy soup. It got cold here. I was going to do a traditional oxtail type soup, but once it got cold, it's January, I wanted a very hearty vegetable soup. It got down to almost freezing last night. Anyway, we're going to use 375 grams of carrots, 140 grams of shallots, 190 grams of onion, 225 grams of mushrooms, 55 grams of garlic, 300 grams of potatoes, 276 grams of Shanghai bok choy, 334 grams of oxtail meat, 750 milliliters of oxtail stock, and about 200 grams of tomato paste.
I forgot to mention 3 serrano peppers. The Shanghai bok choy, I'm going to cut off the leafy bits, and we're going to add those later. And the solid bits on the bottom, we're going to saute off with the onions and garlic and shallots and carrots, just because they need a bit of softening up. Okay, rather than this being a video of me chopping stuff for a half hour, I thought I would just show you the finished vegetables before we start the actual cooking. The shallots, garlic, and onion are finely chopped. The carrots are chunked. The Shanghai bok choy bottoms are sliced. The mushrooms have been mandolined on a 2, just rough cubes for the tomatoes, and the serrano peppers are just sliced. Now we're going to start to cook this off before we add any of our stock or our meat. So once again, I have to thank Blair for losing a bet to me and buying me this huge Dutch oven that makes all this possible. So we're going to heat the Dutch oven to a medium heat. I'm actually using an induction burner for this because it's very big. The induction burner actually heats it up faster. I may end up moving it to another burner later, depending on how long I plan to cook everything. So we add just a dash of olive oil. Then we're going to add about 60 milliliters or 60 grams of butter. You never have too much butter. And now we start adding the shallots and garlic. That's a lot of butter. I may have overshot that. We'll see. We'll see how this turns out. Start that cooking off, as well as the onions, carrots, and bok choy. And we'll cover that while watching it carefully. We want this to soften up and gain a bit of color. While that's cooking off, this is our oxtail soup stock from yesterday. And now we're going to remove the solidified fat from it. As you can see, there's quite a bit. We want to make sure we get the fat but not any of the stock, because that's all flavor. And also, you can see we're going to have to dilute this because it's basically like Jello. And that gelatinous stuff is going to become the stock for our soup. Okay, our vegetables have become translucent. It's time to add the rest of it. So to that, we're going to add the mushrooms. The serrano peppers, and the potatoes. Now I'm a little worried about over salting this because I suspect our stock is going to be saltier than I thought it was going to be. Also, we should be able to get some more moisture out of these mushrooms coming into this. And as I said, this is a pretty vegetable heavy soup. Should be nice on a cold winter day. Okay, so this has been cooking, I guess, for about 20 minutes. It looks like this. To this we're going to add about 10 grams of fresh chopped rosemary and 20 grams of tarragon. And I've put their stalks in a spice bag so I can get the flavor out of their stalks as well. And to all this goodness, we're going to add a cup of red wine. I'm using a 2016 Shiraz from 8th generation because that's what I have open, but you can use whatever you like. As you can see, we've got quite a bit of liquid in there now. I might not have to augment my beef stock, but we'll see how it goes. We'll cover that and let it cook for a bit. Okay, that tastes very nice just the way it is, actually. I thought I might have to add something to it, but everything's come together and the wine's added a bit of acid. So this has come together quite nicely. As you can tell, our vegetables are all soft, so now it is time to add our oxtail stock. I really hope this turns out well because it really tastes good the way it is now. I would just eat this as a vegetable stew, quite frankly. So if you followed me up to here, preparing this, and you just want a nice vegetable stew, just do this part. Anyway, here comes the oxtail stock. This is going to be really, really rich, which is why I added the wine and cooked off the alcohol. Well, I cooked off the alcohol because I can't really have alcohol anymore. But there we go. There's our oxtail stock. And we'll let that melt down and cook for a while. We'll come back and taste it for the seasoning. The carrots are still a little too tough. I think after the seasoning, I'm going to let it cook for an hour or so anyway. Okay, our stock has been melted into our soup. At this point, I'm going to add the leafy tops from the Shanghai bok choy. I'm also going to add a little bit more acid to it by adding, we'll start with 100 grams of tomato paste. And we will let that go for a while. Okay, it's done. The potatoes are soft. The broth tastes amazing. The tarragon really comes through. Let's have a bowl of this. Well, I guess one of the things I should do is, one, don't pick up the hot pot with your bare hands. I should have gone without saying. Well, actually, I guess I didn't say it, and that was a mistake. Second is get rid of this spice bag. It's done its job. All right, let's have a bowl. Lots of vegetables, lots of stock, lots of flavor. Oh, you know what I forgot? And it's going to have to go back on to cook for a while. I forgot to add the oxtail meat. No point having oxtail soup without any oxtail. All right, well, we'll let this go for a little bit. This time I'll actually use something before I pick up. Probably only needs about another 15 minutes. The meat's really tender. It really just has to heat up to be the same temperature as the soup. Okay, let's try this again. Now it looks even better. And let's have a bowl and see how it turned out. Okay, so the review. Broth came out great. You can really taste the tarragon and rosemary. I didn't have to add any salt, and it doesn't feel like it's missing it. There's a bit of heat coming from the serrano peppers. Time for a bit of vegetables. Vegetables are tender. And the oxtail has actually picked up some flavor from the soup. It's better than it was yesterday. Overall, I would say that's a success. I don't know that I would do it again because the oxtail just takes so long to prepare. But if I could buy the components like the oxtail stock and the oxtail meat, I would definitely do this again. In fact, I would probably just do the vegetable portion of this again because that came out fantastic. Anyway, that's my take on oxtail soup. If you got a lot of time on your hands, give it a shot.